Hello again. My name is Janet Sadlock and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to make a special dinner roll that has been a favorite in my family for years. And so I just wanted to share the recipe with you. Initially I probably made it by mixing the dough together and kneading it by hand, but with the bread machine it's so much easier to just put the ingredients in the bread machine and then to turn it on and have the machine do the mixing of the dough. So what I'm going to do today is to just put the ingredients in the bread machine and put it in there. Many of you probably have gotten rid of your bread machines, but if you go to the thrift store, you might find a good buy on one, and you don't have to have it bake, you just have to have it mix. And you will, if you like to have fresh baked bread, it will just be a wonderful addition to your house. So let's get started. I have the interior for the bread machine here. I just take it out when I fill it so I don't get a lot of flour down around it. So what I like to do is to, before I start putting things into the container, is I like to just be sure that the blade is loose, because a couple times when I've made bread, I get it all in there and then I put it in the machine and it doesn't want to turn because during storage the blade kind of locked into the position that it was. So that's just a handy tip to help you there. So I'm going to add the water first. So I have a cup of water. Just pour that in. Then I'm going to put in 1 egg and just add that to it. You can put it in another container first if you want to. Then 3 tablespoons of butter, and I like to cut the butter into smaller pieces. It just mixes in a little more readily, but you can take it right out of the refrigerator when you put it in. There's a heater in the bread machine, so it'll warm the water and warm the ingredients, so that you don't have to heat anything ahead of time. Okay, so then after we put the butter and the egg in, then I'm going to add 1/4 cup of sugar. And then I have a teaspoon of salt. And one of the things I like to do in a lot of my bread recipes is to add potato flakes. And what the potato flakes do is that they help to keep the dough more moist. And I learned that when I was working at Pillsbury. We had let me just put in the cardamom here. We were fortunate to have Julia Childs and James Beard come and do a little program for us on making bread. And that was one of the ingredients that Julia Childs always used in her bread, was to put potato in it. And of course you can cook the potato and add it, but it's easier to just use the potato flakes. So I just buy the mashed potato flakes. I like the flakes better than the granules, and then just add them to a lot of my bread doughs. So I'm putting in 3 cups of flour. I have a cup in each of these cups. And so what it is I have about half bread flour and half all-purpose flour. You can make your rolls with totally all-purpose flour. Living here in Minnesota, we have a lot of Scandinavian influence, and so at Christmas almost all the breads have cardamom in it. And I like to put just a little bit in the rolls year round. The kids don't complain about it, and I really like the flavor of it. So then the other ingredient that we need in here, that was 1/2 teaspoon of cardamom. Then I'm going to add 1 3/4 teaspoon of dry yeast. And what I do is I buy the yeast in like the larger bulk containers, either from a wholesale store or like at the co-op, and then I just keep that in the freezer, and then I refill my jar. As you can tell by this jar, it's been used for years, but it has a seal on it, so I just put the lid on it and keep it in the refrigerator, and then just take it out and measure it out when I need to. So here's everything in the container, ready to go. And so I'm going to just place this in the bread machine. And then on this machine I have to just select, and so I want is the dough cycle. So I'm going to just keep pushing it here till I get to the dough cycle. Of course it's 8 pushes. And then I just push start. And so it says 1 hour and 30 minutes. So it's going to take 1 hour and 30 minutes for the bread to mix. And when it's mixed, it's going to mix and rise and then mix again. And so when it dings at 1 hour and 30 minutes, it'll be all ready to shape and make into the rolls. So wasn't that easy? Hopefully we had a nice little break there. And during that time, the bread mixed, and then it had a chance to rise, and then mix some more, and now it's ready to come out of the bread machine. So what I need to do for my surface here is to just brush it a little bit with oil. So I just put some oil on a paper towel, not enough to make it really oily. And if the dough is really sticky, then I put more on. But And then I have a rolling pin here. I'm going to just moisten that a little bit with the oil too. So we'll take the bread out of the machine, and you can see it's all mixed here and ready to go. So we'll just empty it out. And often the blade in this machine, often the blade just comes with it. So we'll just pull that out. Otherwise, you don't want that to be in the middle of your loaf of bread. And we'll set this aside. And then I'm going to just roll this out. So it's already in a pretty good circle. I'll just take it one around here just a little bit. And I want to roll it into a circle. So it's best if I start with a circle when I run a roll to a circle. So I'll just take and roll from the center out. And a lot of times with doughs, I'll use a stockinette, and I'll use a dish towel or something like that on the surface so that I can put flour on it. But I find with bread doughs, unless they're super sticky, they're really easier to work with just directly on a countertop or on a wooden surface. So I can turn this over. The little spots that you see in there are the cardamom. So I just roll this out kind of equally, starting from the center and going to the edge. And usually I start the rolls about 3 hours before I want to serve them. It takes an hour and a half for the machine to do the mixing, and then it'll take 45 minutes to an hour for the dough to rise after I get it shaped into rolls, and then it usually takes about 10-12 minutes to bake them. So here I'm going to just spread this with softened butter, so I just use a spatula for that. And so usually just butter at room temperature works well. And these rolls I always shape into crescents. You could certainly shape the dough into other shapes, but my family always likes crescents, and this is the easiest and fastest way to do it. So just spread this on with a spatula. And then I'm going to take a knife. I'm going to use a table knife because I don't want to cut my surface. So I'll just cut this into quarters, and then I cut each quarter into 2 pieces. So then I have 16 pieces. Sometimes, because my children and grandchildren often want more than one roll, and I don't like to make more than one batch, so then sometimes I'll try to make more than 4 sections in each corner. Okay, so then you just take and roll these up, start at the edge and then roll to the center, and then I'm going to put them onto the baking pan. So today I'm going to this makes enough for 2 pans. So I'm going to make 1 pan to cook in the regular oven and 1 pan to cook in the convection microwave oven. And so I'll start with this one here. And for the oven here, I'm going to just use the rack that comes with the oven. And then I have these Teflon coated baking sheets that I put on there, and so I don't need to use another baking sheet with it. So I just roll these up and put them onto the pan. And you can bake them either in your regular oven or in the convection oven. Both work well. If you have a double, 2 pans and you want to do them in the same oven, some of the ovens this oven has a high rack, so I could use the high rack for part of them, and then part of them do on the turntable. And if I seem to have different sizes here. I think I didn't cut them really evenly, but so we'll do most of them in this oven. So I especially put the big ones on the outside, and then we'll put a few of them here on the other one, and we'll just put those in the regular oven. I think my math wasn't very good with cutting that into 16 pieces. So roll this up. And then we need to cover those over so they don't dry out, and just let them rise. And it'll take about 45 minutes to an hour to rise in just room temperature. So to cover them, what I'm going to do is to use my favorite thing for covering bread dough, and that's an old plastic, like a food bag, like this was a bread bag probably. So then I just cut it open, and then I can just lay it over the top. If you try to use plastic wrap or anything like that, it's going to stick to the dough. But there's something on the plastic that they use for the bread packaging that keeps it from sticking. So my kids come along and they say, "What do you have this old plastic bag here for?" Well, it's because I always use it for doing the bread. So we get another little break now. We're going to just set these aside and let them rise, and then I'll be back in just a few minutes, but it's actually will be about an hour after they have risen, and then we'll put them in the oven. Okay, well, we're back and ready to bake our dinner rolls. And so I'm going to just take the plastic off of them. And like I said before, that when you use this bread paper, that you can just lift it up off and it doesn't stick to it. If that was plastic wrap, like a saran wrap, it would be clinging to it and it would be kind of a mess. But this is really nice. So just lift it off. I'll wash these off and then let them dry and then store them. I was a little bit mixed up. I must have lost my math abilities because somehow I thought I was cutting these into 16 pieces, but they came out to be 12 pieces. So I just rearranged them a little bit so they were kind of equal amounts. What I'm going to do is I'll bake this one in the regular oven and bake this one in the convection oven. And I have the ovens preheated at 400 degrees. And like I said, I use these Teflon coated baking sheets because they make wonderful papers. And this is a industrial weight coated sheet. And so I can put it on the tray here without it sinking down through. They make this same type of material and they use it for iron-on designs that you put on sweatshirts and t-shirts, but that's a lighter weight, and so then with that it wouldn't hold the food up. But with this heavier industrial weight, then this works really well. So we'll put the first ones into the convection oven, which is preheated. So I open the door and just set them in. And so here I'll push convection, and this is 400 degrees and then 12 minutes. And then I have just preheated the smaller regular oven here. So I'll just slide those into that oven and then set my timer for 12 minutes. There. And so then we'll be able to see them in just a little bit. So while they're baking, then we'll just take a little break here and you can relax and I'll relax, and then we'll be back as soon as they come out of the oven. Well, welcome back. I wish you could be here to smell the good yeast dough smell that's in this kitchen, but the rolls are just about done. So this timer just rang. So we'll see these that are in the convection oven, and so they're nice and brown. And since I made 12 rolls instead of the normal 16, they're a little bit large size. But my family wouldn't like it if I made 12 because then 2 people wouldn't get a roll. So. And then the ones in the regular oven, you can pull those out. And these are baked as well. So normally I wouldn't use 2 ovens, I would just use 1 oven. And if you're using this oven, you could put one of these on top of here and then put 1 layer down on the turntable and then bake it. Usually the ones that are on the turntable will brown a little faster because the heat is absorbed in the turntable, and so that makes the bottom layer cook faster. But then what I do is I just take the turntable out when it's done, and then if the top layer needs a little more time, I just put that one back in the oven for a bit. So these are all ready, and with this Teflon coated fiberglass, I didn't grease it or anything, but I'll use the spatula, not because they're stuck, but because they're hot. And we'll just put them into our bread basket here. And what I like to do with the dinner rolls is to always undercook them a little bit. That makes them, because they'll keep cooking once they come out, and they're very hot. And I don't know what happened to this one. This is the baby one, so. And then we'll put the ones off from here too. So these are really good just with a little butter, a little honey. You can serve some jam with them. And They'll just add to your dinner table. The leftovers you can freeze, and these you just wipe off or wash in soapy water and reuse them again and again. And I roll them up and store them in a paper towel tube when I was talking to the RV industry because their kitchens are so small. Here I just put them into a drawer that pulls open here, and then I can just leave them flat. So either way works well. So let's take a quick close-up look at these. And so here are the nice dinner rolls that you can enjoy. And it really wasn't a lot of work, but you'll get a lot of compliments from them. So enjoy, and we'll see you again at the next video.